once you've marked that song in your songbook, I want to just think about something for a moment, and that is, I just can't faith it, or I just can't believe it enough to act upon it. And I want us to think about something. Our what we do, what we say, everything that we believe is based on our faith in the Word of God. It is based on the fact that we believe that Jesus was God in the flesh, that He came to earth, suffered, and died. And sometimes I think that faith is so simple. And yet faith, as we studied this morning in 2 Peter or 1 Peter chapter 2, let's go back there for just a moment. Into our Bible study this morning. I really didn't put our Bible study together with the lesson until we were in it this morning, and I thought about what Peter writes here in 1 Peter chapter 2, and in verse 1. So put away all malice and all deceit, and hypocrisy and envy and slander. Like newborn infants, long for the pure and spiritual milk, that by it you may grow up into salvation. If indeed you have tasted that the Lord is good. What we do is all of these things that Peter is saying, putting away malice, putting away deceit, putting away hypocrisy, putting away envy and slander. We do those things because we believe that Jesus is Lord. And we believe, based on His Word, that that is what He would desire us to do. But the idea that I just can't faith it or can't believe enough in order to change my life is something that is all too common. To begin with, let's think a bit about the subject of blessings this morning. If you were to look at the blessings in your life, I wonder what they would be. And I want you to think about the blessings in your life, and I want you to think about how they became blessings in your life. For some of you, those blessings might look like the person you're married to. Ask yourself, how did that person come into my life? And what had to take place for that blessing to be in my life as a permanent fixture? For some of us, it might also be our children. And I want you to think about that. I know that I take things to the extreme in that department. Not everybody has 10 kids. But when you think about it, which one of my kids would I want to send back? And even if I could pick and choose which kid I wanted, they're all blessings. And so there are certain things, and I think about how those children came into my life and the decisions that have allowed those children into my life. Those decisions are conscious decisions based on what I believe, and the Lord has allowed those blessings into my life. The decisions for me to marry my wife were decisions based upon the faith that I believed certain things, and I believed that there were certain criteria that God set out for a godly wife, and God allowed my wife into my life. So those are decisions for me that have been based on faith. I think if we look around us, though, and see the other blessings in our life, I think that we could clearly see that God has allowed certain blessings into our lives because of our faith. So the question is, how does a person receive a blessing? How do we get blessings? Where do they come from? Do blessings just fall on people randomly? Or is there some force within our lives that allows us to make decisions that bring additional blessings into our lives? I would like for you to entertain the thought that I believe is true and accurate. That if we live our lives in a certain way that God has designed for His people, that we will receive additional blessings in our lives because of that. Well, that would also mean that then faith is involved in those blessings, because we live by faith. The Hebrew writer says we walk by faith and not by sight. If we walk by faith and not by sight, then faith has to some way be involved. When people see a blessing, let me ask you this: have you ever seen a blessing and run the other direction? Give you a little back history. You know, when this congregation started, when Steve and I and Kate and Celia, and we really thought there would be 2 or 3 other families that would be with us. You know, they're like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. You know, or, well, it really would be a wonderful thing. Those other families never actually ever came all the way. And I think about that for a little bit, and I think, they just missed out on a blessing. You know why? Because they missed out on all of you this morning. And getting to know you guys have been a blessing in our lives. But I think about the blessing of everyone who's here this morning, and some are absent this morning from our number because of the snow. But I think about the blessing this congregation has been in our lives and in the lives of my children. And I think about it didn't just randomly happen. There were risks that had to be taken. There were things that had to come into place. They had to be put into place, both physically and mentally put into place for this to take place. So why does all this happen? If faith is involved, and if people sometimes run away from a blessing, why?